never breaking down. Keep it locked inside, don't make a sound. But I've been carrying weight I can't sustain, trading my truth just to hide the pain. No more masks, no more walls. Time to answer when my purpose calls. This is real talk, no filter, no facade. Man enough to face the truth, however hard. Breaking chains that held me back from who I am. Standing in my power with an open hand. Real talk, this is where we start. Man enough to lead with heart. Man enough to lead with heart.
Brother, let me ask you something that might hurt. When you think about your father, what comes up first? Pride? Pain? Anger? Emptiness? A desperate need to prove something he never acknowledged? For some of you, he was there physically but absent emotionally. For others, he wasn't there at all. For some, he was there, but his presence felt more like a threat than safety. And for others, he was everything you needed, and you're terrified that you'll never measure up. Whatever your answer is, here's what I know. Your relationship with your father, or lack of one, is shaping how you show up as a man right now. It's in the way that you lead, the way that you love, the way that you parent, and the way that you see yourself. This is Man Enough Real Talk. I'm Angela Armstrong, and today we're talking about father wounds, the pain you carry from the man who was supposed to show you how to be a man. This isn't about blaming your father. This is about understanding how his presence or absence shaped you. And more importantly, how you can heal so you don't pass the same wounds to the next generation. If you're still trying to earn approval, you'll never get it. If you're determined not to repeat his mistakes, if you're carrying anger you don't know what to do with, if you never had a father and you're trying to figure out manhood on your own, this episode is for you. Let me tell you what I learned in 27 years of working primarily with men in the military. Almost every man I worked with was carrying something from his father. And most of them didn't even realize it until we started talking about why they showed up the way they did. The guy who couldn't accept praise, his father never acknowledged anything he did right. The guy who worked himself to exhaustion, his father told him his worth was in productivity. The guy who couldn't be vulnerable with his wife, his father taught him that emotions are weakness. The guy who was terrified of failing, his father's approval was conditional on perfection. And the guys who never had fathers, they were trying to figure out manhood with no blueprint, no model, no guidance, just guessing and hoping that they were getting it right. Father wounds come in different forms, but they all leave marks. There's the wound of absence. He wasn't there. Maybe he left. Maybe he died. Maybe he was physically present but emotionally unavailable. Either way, you grew up without the guidance, protection, and affirmation that you needed from the man who was supposed to provide it. And that absence taught you something. Maybe it taught you that you're not worth staying for. Maybe it taught you that men leave when things get hard. Maybe it taught you that you have to figure everything out on your own because no one's coming to help you. There's the wound of criticism. He was there, but nothing you did was ever good enough. You could get straight A's and he'd ask why you didn't get A pluses. You could win the game and he'd point out the mistakes that you made. You could achieve success and he'd find the flaw. And that criticism taught you that your worth is a conditional, that love has to be earned, that you're always one mistake away from losing approval, that you can never rest because you're never enough. There's the wound of harshness. He was there, but his presence felt dangerous. Maybe he was angry. Maybe he was violent. Maybe his words cut deeper than any physical wound ever could. Maybe you learned to walk on eggshells, to read his mood, to make yourself small so you wouldn't trigger his rage. And that harshness taught you that men are dangerous, that anger is how you show strength, that fear is how you control people. Or maybe it taught you the opposite, that you'll never be like him, that you'll suppress every ounce of anger because you're terrified of becoming what he was. There's the wound of emotional distance. He was there. He provided. He showed up, but you never really knew him. He never asked how you felt. He never shared what he felt. He never taught you how to process emotions or navigate relationships. He just taught you how to work, how to provide, how to handle things. And that distance taught you that real men don't feel, that emotions are something to be managed, not expressed, that vulnerability is weakness, that connection is optional as long as you're fulfilling your responsibilities. And then there's the wound of perfection. He was a great father. He did everything right. He was strong, successful, respected, loved. And now you're trying to live up to a standard that feels impossible. You're terrified of disappointing him, terrified of failing, terrified that you'll never be the man that he was. And that perfection taught you that you have to be flawless, that mistakes are unacceptable, that anything less than excellence is failure, that you can never just be human. Here's what all of these wounds have in common. They taught you something about what it means to be a man, and those lessons are running your life right now, whether you realize it or not. So, how does father wounds show up in your life today? They show up in your relationships. If your father was emotionally distant, you might struggle with intimacy. You might be great at providing, but terrible at connecting. You might love your partner, but have no idea how to let them in. If your father was critical, you might be hypercritical of yourself and others. You might have impossibly high standards that no one can meet. You might push people away because you're terrified they'll see you're not enough. If your father was absent, you might struggle with trust. You might keep people at arm's length because you learn that people leave. You might sabotage relationships before they can hurt you, or you might cling too tightly because you're terrified of being abandoned again. They show up in your parenting. If you had a harsh father, you might be overly permissive because you're terrified of being like him. Or maybe you might just be harsh because that's the only model that you have. If you had a critical father, you might overpraise your kids because you don't want them to feel what you felt. Or you might repeat the same patterns because you don't know any other way. If you had an absent father, you might be determined to be present for your kids, but you might not know how because no one showed you. You might be there physically, but struggle to be there emotionally because you never learned how. They showed up in your work. If your father's approval was tied to achievement, you might be a workaholic. You might chase success thinking that what will finally make you enough. You might sacrifice your health, your relationships, your peace, all to prove something to a man who might never acknowledge it. If your father taught you that your worth is in your productivity, you might not know how to rest. You might feel guilty for taking breaks. You might measure your value by your output instead of your humanity. They show up in how you see yourself. If your father never affirmed you, you might struggle to believe you're valuable. You might need constant external validation because you never developed internal worth. If your father was harsh, you might have an internal critic that sounds exactly like him. You might beat yourself up for every mistake that you make. You might never give yourself grace because you never received it. If your father was absent, you might feel like you're making it all up as you go, like you're pretending to be a man without really knowing what that means. Like everyone else got the manual and you're just guessing. Here's the hard truth. Your father's wounds became your wounds. His pain became your pain. His limitations became your limitations. Not because you're weak, but because that's how generational trauma works. It passes down until someone decides to break the cycle. And that someone can be you. So, how do you heal a father wound? First, you have to acknowledge that it exists. You have to be honest about how your father's presence or absence affected you, not to blame him, not to excuse your behavior, but to understand where your patterns come from. You can't heal what you won't acknowledge, and you can't change patterns that you don't understand. So ask yourself, what did my father teach me about being a man? What did I learn from his presence or his absence? What beliefs am I carrying that came from him? What wounds am I still nursing that he left? Second, you have to grieve what you didn't get. If you needed affirmation and got criticism, grieve that. If you needed presence and got absence, grieve that. If you needed safety and got fear, grieve that. Grief isn't weakness. Grief is how you process loss. And you did lose something. You lost the father that you needed. Maybe not the father that you had, but the father you needed. And until you grieve that loss, you'll keep trying to get from other people what your father never gave you. You'll keep chasing approval from bosses, partners, friends, trying to fill a void that can't be filled externally. Third, you have to separate his limitations from your identity. Your father's inability to affirm you doesn't mean that you're not valuable. Your father's emotional distance doesn't mean that you're unlovable. Your father's absence doesn't mean that you're not worth staying for. His limitations were about him, his wounds, his pain, his lack of tools, not about your worth. You are not defined by what your father couldn't give you. You are not limited by his limitations. You are not doomed to repeat his patterns. Fourth, you have to do the work he didn't do. If he didn't process his emotions, you can learn to process yours. If he didn't seek help, you can seek help. If he didn't break generational patterns, you can break them. You can be the man who says, "It stops with me." The pain, the patterns, the wounds, they stop here. I'm not passing this to my kids. I'm not carrying this into my relationships. I'm healing this so the next generation doesn't have to. And that work, that's the most important work you'll ever do. Not just for you, but for everyone who comes after you. Fifth, you might need to have a conversation with your father. If he's alive, if it's safe, if it would serve your healing, not to attack him, not to make him apologize, but to speak your truth, to tell him how his actions affected you, to release what you've been carrying all these years. And here's the thing, he might not respond the way you want. He might not acknowledge your pain. He might not apologize. And he might not change. But your healing isn't dependent on his response. Your healing is dependent on you speaking your truth and releasing what it is that you've been holding. And if he's not alive, or if it's not safe, or if a conversation wouldn't serve you, you can still do this work. You can write him a letter that you never send. You can speak to an empty chair in a therapist's office. You can release what you need to release without his participation. Sixth, you have to build what you didn't receive. If you didn't have a father who affirmed you, you can learn to affirm yourself. If you didn't have a father who taught you emotional intelligence, you can learn it now. If you didn't have a father who modeled healthy relationships, you can build them now. You're not stuck with what you were given. You can build what you need. And finally, you might need to find father figures, men who can show you what you didn't see, mentors, coaches, therapists, friends, men who can model healthy masculinity, men who can affirm you, men who can guide you. It's not too late to receive what you needed. It just might come from a different source than you originally expected. Let's do a power pause right now. Take a deep breath with me. In through your nose for 4 counts. Hold for 4. Out through your mouth for 4. Do that 2 more times. Now, I want you to ask yourself 2 questions and just sit with them. Don't rush to answer it. Question 1. What did I need from my father that I didn't get? Question 2. What would change in my life if I stopped trying to earn what should have been freely given to me? Just sit with those questions for a moment. Let whatever comes up come up. Whatever you're feeling right now is valid. The pain is real, the loss is real, and you have every right to feel it. Brothers, Your father wound is not your fault, but healing it is your responsibility. Not because you owe anyone anything, but because you deserve to be free. You deserve to show up in your relationships without his limitations. You deserve to parent your kids without his wounds. You deserve to see yourself clearly, not through the lens of his approval or disapproval. Here's what I want you to do this week. First, write down what you learned about being a man from your father, the good and the bad, what he taught you intentionally and what he taught you unintentionally. Just get it out of your head and onto the paper. Second, identify one pattern you're repeating that came from him. One belief, one behavior. One way of showing up that you learned from him that's not serving you. Just one. And third, do something different. If he was emotionally distant, be emotionally present with someone that you love. If he was critical, practice self-compassion. If he was absent, show up fully for someone who needs you. Break the pattern in one small way. Email me at angela@calibratedresilience.com, ANGELA@CALIBRATEDRESILIENCE.com. Again, that's Angela@calibratedresilience.com. And tell me about your father wound. Tell me what you needed that you didn't get. Tell me what pattern that you want to break. You don't have to have it all figured out. You just have to be willing to start. Remember, you are not your father. You are not limited by his limitations, and you are not defined by his wounds. You can be the man you needed him to be. Next week, we're talking about the anger you're not allowed to feel, the rage you've been suppressing, the frustration that you've been swallowing, the anger that's eating you alive because you've been told that good men don't get angry. If you're carrying anger you don't know what to do with, then that next episode is for you. Until then, I want you to remember this. Healing your father wound doesn't mean excusing what he did or didn't do. It means freeing yourself from carrying his pain. It means becoming the man that you needed, not the man that he was. You can break the cycle, and it starts with you. Thank you for listening. I'm Angela R. Strong, and this is Man Enough, Real Talk.
Learned resilience in the fire and the fight. The real courage shows up in the quiet night. When I choose to feel instead of running away. When I speak my mind and mean what I say. No more silence, no more shame. Time to step into a different game. No filter, no facade. Man enough to face the truth, however hard. Breaking chains to help me back from who I am. Standing in my power with an open hand. Real talk, this is where we start. Man enough to lead with heart. Man enough to lead with heart. Stop, breathe, choose. The power's mine. Calibrated strength one day at a time. From chaos to clarity, I'm finding my way. My day. This is real talk, raw and unafraid. Man enough to grow through every choice I've made right. Rising from the struggle into who I'm meant to be. Owning every scar, owning every star that set me free. Real talk, this is my art. Man enough to lead with heart. Man enough, real talk.